There is a fruit growing wild across North America right now that most people have never tasted. It has more antioxidants than blueberries, more vitamin C than oranges, more anthocyanins than acai. It grows without irrigation, without fertilizer, without any human intervention at all, on shrubs that have been thriving on this continent for thousands of years. And almost no one is growing it in their garden. Not because it is difficult, not because it tastes bad, it tastes extraordinary, but because somewhere in the last 100 years, while the commercial food system was deciding which fruits were worth growing at scale, this one was quietly passed over. And when a fruit disappears from the market, it disappears from awareness. And when it disappears from awareness, it disappears from gardens. And within 2 or 3 generations, a fruit that fed entire civilizations becomes something most people have never heard of. Today, I want to tell you about that fruit, and about several others that share the same story, native superfruits that outperform the imported berries we spend serious money on, that our great-grandparents knew and ate, and that have been waiting in hedgerows and forest edges the whole time we've been ignoring them. Stay until the end, because the last fruit on this list was eaten on this continent for over 10,000 years before European contact, is more nutritious than almost anything in the produce section of a modern supermarket, and can be grown in a pot on a balcony. Welcome to the quiet garden. Let's get into it. The pawpaw. The pawpaw, Asimina triloba, is the largest fruit native to North America. It grows wild from Nebraska to the Atlantic coast, from southern Ontario to northern Florida, in the forest understory along river banks and in the dappled shade of woodland edges. It has been there, producing abundantly, for as long as humans have lived on this continent. The taste is unlike any other temperate fruit. The flesh is soft and custardy, the color of egg yolk, with a tropical sweetness that people describe as somewhere between a banana and a mango with hints of vanilla. It is one of those tastes that people who encounter it for the first time respond to with genuine surprise, not because it is strange, but because it is extraordinary, and because nothing in their experience of fruit prepared them for it. Thomas Jefferson grew pawpaws at Monticello. George Washington is recorded as eating them. Lewis and Clark survived on pawpaws during a stretch of their expedition when other food ran out. The journals noted they were grateful for them. Langston Hughes wrote about them. They were woven into the folk songs and rural culture of a continent. And then the commercial food system made its decisions. Pawpaws bruise easily. They ripen quickly after picking within a few days and cannot survive the refrigeration and transport that make large-scale distribution possible. So when supermarkets became the primary food source, pawpaws were not viable as a commercial crop. They were not planted. They were not promoted. They were not purchased. Within a generation of the supermarket becoming normal, the pawpaw moved from familiar to forgotten. Nutritionally, the pawpaw stands up to anything in the modern fruit market. It is high in vitamin C, riboflavin, niacin, iron, magnesium, copper, and manganese. It contains more protein than most common fruits. The seeds and bark contain acetogenins, compounds being actively studied by researchers for their potential in cancer treatment, specifically for their ability to selectively disrupt ATP production in cancer cells while leaving normal cells unaffected. This research is preliminary and ongoing, but it is serious enough to have generated decades of academic interest from institutions including Purdue University, which maintains one of the largest pawpaw research programs in the world. The pawpaw cannot be commercially distributed. That limitation is precisely what makes it perfect for home growing. A pawpaw grower has no national competition. The only fresh pawpaw available within 50 miles is the one you grew. Farmers markets charge premium prices for them. Chefs with serious local food commitments have been searching for reliable pawpaw suppliers for years and finding almost no one. The tree is cold hardy through much of the temperate zone, to -20 Celsius in established trees. It is naturally pest-resistant because almost no North American insect pest has evolved to eat it. Deer, which devastate most fruit trees, leave pawpaws completely alone. It grows in shade and in sun, in moist bottomland soil and in reasonably well-drained upland conditions. You need two genetically different trees for cross-pollination. Plant them within 50 feet of each other. They begin producing in 3 to 5 years. A mature tree produces 20 to 50 pounds of fruit in a good year, and trees live for decades. The fruit that fed this continent for 10,000 years is available as a nursery tree right now. And growing it in your garden makes you the only source of fresh pawpaw most of your neighbors will ever encounter. Aronia the chokeberry. Aronia the chokeberry is native to eastern North America. It grows wild from Newfoundland to Florida, in bogs, in swamp edges, in rocky open woodland. Indigenous communities across its range used it extensively, the berries eaten fresh, dried into pemmican, used medicinally for colds and as an astringent treatment for wounds and infections. The nutritional research on Aronia has been conducted primarily in Poland, where Eastern European plant breeders noticed the berry in the early 20th century, brought selected varieties into cultivation, and built a significant commercial industry around them. In Poland, Aronia is an everyday ingredient in juices, wines, jams, and health products. In North America, where it originates, it is nearly unknown. The antioxidant concentration in Aronia berries is the highest measured in any fruit studied. Not just higher than blueberries, significantly higher. The ORAC value, which measures antioxidant capacity, places Aronia at roughly double the value of cultivated blueberries and well above acai, elderberry, and goji. The specific compounds responsible, anthocyanins and proanthocyanins, have been studied in clinical research for cardiovascular benefits, showing reductions in blood pressure, LDL oxidation, and inflammatory markers. Research programs in Poland, Sweden, and the United States have published findings on Aronia's effects on blood sugar regulation, liver protection, and urinary tract health. The raw berry is intensely astringent. The tannins that carry the antioxidant load create a drying, puckering sensation in the mouth that makes fresh eating unappealing to most people. This is almost certainly why Aronia never became a mainstream commercial berry in North America. A fruit that puckers the mouth is a hard sell next to a sweet blueberry. But cooked, juiced, dried, or fermented, Aronia is extraordinary. Aronia juice cut with apple juice is deeply colored, rich, and pleasant. Aronia jam has a complexity that blueberry jam cannot approach. Aronia wine is one of the most interesting fruit wines made in the regions where it is produced. Dried Aronia berries in granola or baked goods add a concentrated berry flavor and color that is visually dramatic and nutritionally significant. The shrubs are completely cold-hardy, pest-resistant, and tolerant of wet soil conditions that would kill most fruit plants. They produce heavily within 2 to 3 years of planting, require no spraying, and bear for decades. The autumn leaf color, deep crimson and orange, makes them one of the most ornamentally valuable native shrubs that can be planted in a garden, entirely independently of the fruit. A native fruit, ignored in the country where it grows wild, celebrated and commercially cultivated in countries where it was imported. The pattern appears again and again with native superfruits, and Aronia may be the clearest example of it. Elderberry. The elder, Sambucus nigra in Europe, Sambucus canadensis in North America, has been a food and medicine plant on both continents for as long as people have recorded their use of plants. In Europe, the elder was surrounded by folklore and practical knowledge in equal measure. The flowers were made into cordial and fritters, the berries into wine, syrup, jam, and the winter remedy that every household kept, elderberry syrup, given at the first sign of illness, trusted across generations to shorten and ease the cold and flu season. In North America, Every indigenous nation within the range of the American elder used it. The berries as food, the flowers as medicine, the bark and roots for other purposes. It was not a single culture's discovery. It was the consistent, independent conclusion of dozens of different peoples over thousands of years that this plant was worth knowing. The clinical research now confirms it. Multiple controlled, peer-reviewed trials have shown elderberry extract significantly reduces the duration and severity of both influenza and common cold infections. The mechanism involves flavonoids, particularly cyanidin compounds, that bind directly to the protein spikes of influenza viruses and prevent them from penetrating host cells. This is a specific, documented molecular mechanism of antiviral activity, not a general immune boost. The berries also contain significant amounts of vitamin C, vitamin A, and anthocyanins with cardiovascular and anti-inflammatory benefits. The flowers contain flavonoids with different but complementary properties, anti-inflammatory, diuretic, and expectorant, which is why both the flowers and berries were used, for different purposes, in the traditional medicine of every culture that had access to them. Elder grows wild along fence lines, hedgerows, forest edges, disturbed ground, and roadsides across the continent. The shrubs are large and fast-growing, reaching 10 to 15 feet with minimal care. Named varieties selected for larger berry clusters and higher yields are available from nurseries and produce significantly more harvestable fruit than wild plants. The fruit that every household in a previous generation kept as winter medicine, that multiple cultures on multiple continents independently discovered, had the same properties, and that clinical trials have now confirmed, grows wild outside most people's gardens, unrecognized and unharvested, while people pay pharmacy prices for the syrup made from it. See buckthorn. C. buckthorn, Hippophae rhamnoides, grows wild from the Atlantic coasts of Europe through Central Asia to China, on coastal dunes, on mountain slopes, in places where the soil is poor and the conditions are harsh. It is a thorny, silver-leaved shrub that thrives in the conditions that defeat most plants. The berries are small, intensely orange, and packed so densely on the branches that a well-fruited sea buckthorn looks like it is glowing. The flavor is intensely sour and complex, somewhere between orange and passion fruit with a sharp, tart quality that makes the raw berry an acquired taste. The nutritional content is extraordinary by any standard. Sea buckthorn berries contain more vitamin C than virtually any other plant source. Depending on variety, estimates range from 10 to 15 times the vitamin C content of oranges per gram. They contain vitamins A, E, K, and uniquely among plant sources B12, a vitamin almost entirely absent from the plant kingdom. They contain all 4 omega fatty acids, 3, 6, 7, and 9, in a combination that is found almost nowhere else in nature. The omega-7 content in particular, palmitoleic acid, found in the seed and berry oil, is significant for skin and mucous membrane health, and is being studied for metabolic syndrome. Traditional communities across Central Asia, Siberia, the Himalayas, and China have used sea buckthorn for centuries. In these regions, it never needed rediscovering because it was never forgotten. The berries are juiced, made into jam, pressed for oil, and used in a range of traditional preparations that the local populations have maintained continuously. The shrub itself is extraordinary in the garden. It fixes nitrogen from the air through its root system, improving the soil around it and fertilizing neighboring plants. It tolerates salt spray, wind, drought, poor soil, and cold to -40°C. It forms an impenetrable thorny barrier that serves as one of the most effective hedges available, and simultaneously produces one of the most nutritionally concentrated fruits in the plant world. You need a male and female plant for berry production. One male pollinates up to 8 females. The female plants produce berries in abundance, but harvesting them is the one genuine challenge sea buckthorn presents. The berries grow tight to the branches, and the branches are very thorny. Traditional harvesting in Siberia involves cutting the berry-laden branches and freezing them, then knocking the frozen berries loose. This works. It is not elegant, but it is effective. The juice, diluted with water or apple juice and sweetened with honey, is outstanding. The oil, pressed from the seeds and flesh, is one of the most concentrated botanical oils available for both internal use and skin health. A plant that grows on bare dunes in freezing conditions without any help produces a fruit more nutritionally complete than anything in the supermarket and improves the soil it grows in while it does it. Goji berry. The goji berry, Lycium barbarum, has been cultivated and used in Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. In the regions where it originates, the Ningxia and Xinjiang provinces of China, the mountain valleys of Tibet, it is not a superfood trend. It is simply a berry that people grow in their gardens and eat as food, as they have done for as long as anyone remembers. In the Western world, it arrived as a marketed superfood in the early 2000s and was sold in dried form at prices that reflected its imported, exotic status. That marketing created both awareness and skepticism. The legitimate nutritional value of the berry became entangled with the commercial claims of the supplement industry, which made it difficult to see the plant clearly. The plant clearly is this: a hardy, drought-tolerant, moderately thorny shrub that grows in any well-drained soil, produces sweet-tasting red berries across a long season, and contains zeaxanthin, a carotenoid with documented protective effects on the macula of the eye, in concentrations higher than almost any other food. It also contains betaine, polysaccharides, and a range of antioxidant compounds that have been the subject of serious research on immune function, blood sugar regulation, and neuroprotection. For growing in a temperate garden, goji is one of the most straightforward fruiting shrubs available. It is cold-hardy to -15°C. It tolerates poor soil, dry conditions, and urban environments without complaint. It begins producing berries in its second or third year, fruits over a long season from midsummer into autumn, and requires minimal maintenance once established. The fresh berry, eaten straight from the plant, tastes completely different from the dried version familiar from health food stores. Fresh goji is sweet, slightly herbal, and genuinely pleasant. Growing your own means eating the fresh fruit in season rather than paying premium prices for a dried product that has traveled a significant distance to reach you. A berry used continuously for 2,000 years in the culture where it originates, sold at a premium as an exotic import in the countries where it grows perfectly well as a garden shrub. Plant it once. It does the rest. Honeyberry haskep. The honeyberry, Lonicera caerulea, also called haskep in Japan and parts of Canada, is the cold climate berry that most people in the world have never encountered. It is one of the first fruits to ripen in the temperate garden, sometimes weeks before strawberries, in April or May depending on location. The berries are elongated, deep blue-purple, and have a flavor that sits somewhere between a blueberry and a raspberry with a slight tart edge that makes them more complex than either. In Japan, where haskep has been cultivated for centuries in the northern island of Hokkaido, it is considered a delicacy and associated with longevity in the communities where it has been eaten traditionally. The nutritional profile is outstanding. Haskep contains among the highest anthocyanin concentrations of any commercially relevant berry, higher than cultivated blueberries in most analyses. Anthocyanins are the compounds responsible for the deep blue-purple color and are associated with cardiovascular protection, anti-inflammatory activity, improved blood sugar regulation, and neuroprotective effects in ongoing research. For cold climate gardeners, haskep solves a genuine problem. In gardens where late frosts are common and the growing season is short, the list of productive fruit plants is limited. Haskep flowers survive temperatures that would destroy strawberry blossoms and stone fruit flowers. It is hardy to -40°C in established plants. It thrives in the conditions, short summers, cold winters, wet springs that defeat most fruit crops. You need two compatible varieties for cross-pollination and reliable fruiting. Once established, the shrubs are long-lived, productive, and require almost no maintenance. The earliest fruit of the season, from one of the coldest hardy shrubs available, with an anthocyanin content that rivals the most celebrated berries in the health food market. It is barely known outside of Japan, Russia, and parts of Canada, which means the window to be early with it is still open. Serviceberry Juneberry. The serviceberry, Amelanchier species, is a tree or large shrub native across North America that produces small, round, dark purple berries in June, which is how the common name Juneberry was earned. The berries taste like a blueberry crossed with an almond, with a mildly sweet, slightly nutty flavor that makes them one of the most pleasant raw-eating berries in the native North American flora. Indigenous nations across the continent depended on them, eaten fresh in season, dried for winter, mixed with fat and dried meat to make pemmican, the concentrated, high-energy travel food that sustained people across long journeys and difficult seasons. Lewis and Clark recorded serviceberries as an important food during their expedition. Early European settlers quickly learned what indigenous communities already knew, that the serviceberry was one of the most reliable and abundant fruit sources available in the landscape. And then cultivation shifted entirely to imported varieties. Strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, fruits that the commercial system could grow, package, and distribute at scale. The serviceberry, which produces fruit faster than most of them, can be reached by commercial harvesting equipment and ripens over a short concentrated window, was left behind. For the garden, the serviceberry is extraordinary. Most species begin producing fruit in their second or third year. They are cold-hardy, tolerant of a wide range of soil types, and beautiful through every season, white flowers in early spring among the first of any fruiting plant, followed by the berries in June, excellent autumn color in October. They grow as large shrubs or small trees, making them useful as both a food plant and a landscape plant simultaneously. The berries are high in iron, copper, manganese, and anthocyanins. The iron content is among the highest of any common berry, a quality that indigenous peoples who depended heavily on them as a food source likely benefited from significantly. A fruit that covered this continent, that people depended on for thousands of years, that grows beautifully in any temperate garden, that produces generous quantities of genuinely delicious berries, and that almost nobody plants anymore, because it was never picked up by the commercial food system, and what the commercial food system ignores, the culture eventually forgets. Nannyberry and black haw. Nannyberry, Viburnum lentago, and its close relative black haw, Viburnum prunifolium, are native North American shrubs that produce clusters of blue-black berries in late summer and autumn, hanging from the branches like small bunches of grapes. The berries of both species are edible and genuinely good, sweet, with a prune-like richness and slight almond note from benzaldehyde compounds in the flesh. They are best eaten after the first frost, which converts starches to sugars and softens the flesh to a raisin-like texture. At that point, they are rich, sweet, and complex in a way that is entirely unexpected from a plant most people consider purely ornamental. Indigenous peoples across the eastern half of North America ate nannyberry and black haw extensively. The berries were eaten fresh, dried for winter storage, and made into a sweetened drink. Black haw bark was used medicinally, specifically for uterine cramps and threatened miscarriage, a use that persisted in American herbal medicine through the 19th century, and that has since been confirmed to have a pharmacological basis in the plant's viburnum compounds. Both shrubs are completely cold-hardy, tolerant of shade, tolerant of wet soil, and native plants that support the local ecosystem in ways that imported ornamentals cannot. They produce berries that most passers-by ignore entirely, not knowing the berries are edible, not knowing they were once a significant food source. A forager who knows what to look for will collect nannyberries from shrubs that have been planted as ornamentals in public parks, along streets, in garden centers labeled only by their botanical name, with no indication that the fruit is food. Now you know what to look for. Buffaloberry. The buffaloberry, Shepherdea argentea, the silver buffaloberry, is a thorny native North American shrub of the Great Plains and Rocky Mountain regions that produces small, red to orange berries in mid to late summer. The Lakota people called them the berry that makes the buffalo fat, reflecting how central they were to the diet during the bison hunting seasons of the Great Plains. They were eaten fresh, dried, and most famously beaten into a froth with water and fat to create a traditional whipped dessert. The berry's natural saponins, the same compounds that give them a slightly soapy quality, create stable foam when agitated, allowing them to be whipped in a way that no other native berry can match. Nutritionally, buffalo berries are extraordinarily high in lycopene, the carotenoid pigment associated with cardiovascular protection and prostate health that is most commonly associated with tomatoes. Buffaloberry lycopene content exceeds that of tomatoes in many analyses. They are also high in vitamin C and contain a range of antioxidant polyphenols. The shrub fixes nitrogen in the soil through a symbiotic relationship with soil bacteria, similar to legumes, which means it improves the land around it as it grows. It is drought-tolerant, cold-hardy to extreme temperatures, and capable of growing in the poor soils of the Great Plains where few other fruit plants survive. A berry that fed the Great Plains nations, that has lycopene content exceeding tomatoes, that fixes nitrogen in poor soil, that grows without irrigation in conditions where most plants fail, and that almost no one outside of a narrow band of traditional communities and specialist nurseries knows exists. The mayhaw. The mayhaw, Crataegus aestivalis and related species, is a native North American hawthorn that produces small, apple-like fruits in May, which is where the name comes from, in the flooded bottomland forests and swampy lowlands of the American South, from Texas across to Georgia and the Carolinas. In the communities where it grows, mayhaw jelly has been a regional tradition for generations. The small fruits are too tart and seedy to eat raw, but their extraordinary pectin content and flavor make a jelly of remarkable quality. A deep ruby red, intensely flavored preserve that was for much of the 20th century a standard product in Southern kitchens and at church fairs and family gatherings across the Gulf states. Outside those communities, the mayhaw is almost entirely unknown. It never traveled commercially. The fruit bruises easily, and the window from ripening to overripeness is short. The harvest season, 2 or 3 weeks in May, is concentrated and weather-dependent. None of these qualities made it viable for mass distribution. What they make it is perfect for home production. A mayhaw tree in the right conditions, moist, slightly acidic soil, in the American South or in similar climates, produces abundantly in its narrow spring window and asks almost nothing through the rest of the year. The harvest is gathered by spreading sheets under the tree and shaking the branches, or by letting fallen fruit collect at the base. It is processed immediately into jelly or juice and stored. For the communities that have kept mayhaw culture alive, the arrival of mayhaw season is an event. The trees are managed on family land, the gathering is a social occasion, and the jelly produced is something that cannot be bought in any shop at any price. The food culture built around a native fruit in a specific region, maintained by the communities that never forgot it, is one of the most important things that can be preserved. The mayhaw is both a food plant and a record of how people lived in relationship with the land around them. All of these fruits share the same story. They grew here. They fed people here for thousands of years in communities that understood their value, their flavor, their season, and their care. Then the commercial food system arrived and made choices based on what could be grown at scale, shipped across distances, and sold with a reliable shelf life. Those choices were logical from a distribution standpoint. They were not choices about nutrition or flavor or the long-term relationship between people and the land they live on. And the fruits that didn't meet the commercial criteria didn't disappear from the land. They just disappeared from awareness. They are still there, in forest edges and hedgerows and riverbanks and the margins of fields, in specialist nurseries that have kept the named varieties alive for the gardeners who know to look, in the knowledge of communities that never stopped growing and eating them. Every fruit on this list can be grown in a home garden. Some need space for multiple plants. Some grow in conditions, shade, wet soil, poor ground, where most fruit plants refuse. All of them produce food that the supermarket cannot offer and the supplement industry cannot replicate. The blueberry is a fine fruit, but it did not build civilizations. It was not carried across continents by people who understood it as a survival resource. It was not the fruit that Lewis and Clark were grateful for when other food ran out. Those fruits are the ones in this video, and they are waiting to come back into the gardens where they belong. Share this video with someone who gardens. Leave a comment with the fruit that surprised you most or with the one you're planning to grow. And subscribe to The Quiet Garden if you haven't already, because this is exactly what we are here for. See you in the next one.
So hello guys, this is Roman and welcome to our channel The Quick Garden, where we will post the videos about weeds, plants and everything. So hope you will like the every video being posted in this channel, and thank you so much.